The Oracle Network. Look deeper.
It's the ups and downs of living life this way. Promise me you'll never go away. Just stay with me through one more night, because it's always darkest before the light. And now I promise you I'll never turn away. I won't let you give us one last heart to break.
You are listening to For the Victim, a podcast that may contain adult themes, explicit language, and graphic depictions of violence. Portions of this show may be traumatic for those under 18. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome back to For the Victim podcast, where we dig deep into the darkest injustices that happen in true crime stories. I'm your host, Kat. For the Children has been a short spin-off series that focuses on the crimes committed against children. These atrocities could be executed by a caregiver, babysitter, or even the child's own parents. The child abuse stories we have covered are among the worst crimes imaginable because kids are so innocent and trusting. They count on the people caring for them to do just that, care and provide for them. This means tending to their basic needs, giving love, affection, boundaries, and teaching the difference between right and wrong. The story we bring to our listeners today is not different in the complete and utter failure in protecting a young little boy. However, it is different in the severe neglect, torture, and horrific manner of death brought upon young Adrian Jones by his father Michael, also known as Mike Jones, and stepmom Heather Jones. Two separate child protective agencies, the Missouri Department of Social Services and the Kansas Department for Children and Families, were involved with this family. Both failed miserably to protect Adrian from a life of disrespect, pain, and fear. The agencies, Mike, Heather, and any other individual involved with the senseless murder of this adorable little boy, deserve the most severe punishment allowed under the law. Adrian Jones was born to Michael Jones and Dana Pierce, a young couple that never married or stayed together long after the birth of their son. In 2012, Dana lost custody of Adrian to Michael, although her mother, Judy Conway, tried to be part of her grandson's life. In fact, Judy wanted guardianship over her grandson, but it was ultimately granted to Mike since he was the child's father. Michael met and married Heather, and together they started a bail bonds company. They ran it with a reasonable amount of success. At least, they managed to rent a house and have multiple children in addition to keeping their business afloat, so it must have produced a decent income. The home the couple rented belonged to Jen Hoovers, who became the catalyst for Heather and Mike's eventual downfall into prison, where they firmly belonged. You see, landlord Jen had been given access to Heather's iCloud and Facebook accounts. This happened for entirely unknown reasons. There was a plethora of damning evidence located on Heather's phone, so why would she want anyone besides herself to have access is inexplicable. The photos and videos that Jen saw both appalled and sickened her. There were brutal images that depicted Adrian receiving various forms of punishment and abuse. Facebook Messenger screenshots showed Heather sending messages about using a taser on Adrian. Horrified, landlord Jen immediately took the content to the police, and she also showed Adrian's grandma, Judy. Police opened a case, finally getting involved in saving this poor boy from the abuse he was so clearly suffering. What was not immediately apparent, however, was the fact that Adrian was already dead by then, and intervention wasn't going to bring him back. To fully grasp the magnitude of what Adrian suffered, we must go back to the early years of Mike and Heather's relationship. Why this couple even had children, let alone bothered to keep custody of them, makes no sense. The children they reared were never shown love or affection, and they were basically hidden, out of sight, so no one quite knew what was going on inside the home, and they claimed to be homeschooling the children. For some reason, Adrian was targeted from the start, and his every move was watched by surveillance cameras that were placed conspicuously around the house. Videos and photos were taken and preserved, documenting the severe abuse that was inflicted on poor Adrian, and the horror depicted on those images and videos is haunting. It's nearly impossible to see them because the footage and pictures are real, and it's not a scary movie or something that can be written off as a perverse form of entertainment. This was honest-to-goodness pain and suffering, which is entirely evident on Adrian's face and demeanor as he was forced to stand for hours, holding both arms raised with hands in the air. He was shown strapped to a table, blindfolded. Imagine the terror of not being able to move, while one of your most relied-upon senses, your sight, is callously taken away from you as a form of punishment for a crime you didn't even commit. The mere thought makes your stomach turn. The videos were worse. Adrian can be seen being hit alongside his face with a broomstick, shackled, and forced to sit outside and being force-fed food, later described as applesauce mixed with dirt and bugs. The family had a swimming pool in the backyard, but it wasn't the nice kind of swimming pool you would imagine, with clean, treated water. No, this pool was disgusting, and indeed not water any sane person would swim in. Yet one time, Adrian was required to stand inside the pool in water up to his neck, overnight. There simply is nothing this little boy could have done to warrant this type of punishment. Videos and photos alike showed injuries to Adrian, including swollen ankles and wrists from handcuffs and other restraints, scratches, and taser marks. The surveillance video timestamps show that this extreme abuse was Adrian's reality for 9 long months. What is perhaps even more shocking about these monsters video recording and taking pictures of their abuse is that Heather openly discussed it in her Facebook group. Admittedly, it was a private group, but nothing on the internet is private if we are realistic. She discussed the abuse with several others beyond her Facebook group, perhaps never thinking anyone would take her seriously or believe her. Heather never called Adrian by his name when she talked about him. She only called him, quote, the boy. She posted and contributed to her social media groups almost every day complaining about her stepson. Some of the terrible things she said include quotes such as, "He kills everything he comes in contact with and has to be restrained 95% of the time," and, quote, "Pain compliance doesn't work," and also, quote, "I've tried leather belts and that doesn't work." This woman was pure evil. To give a little context, there were approximately 7,000 Facebook messages which also contained several photos talking about physical punishment, restraint, abuse, torture, and confinement of Adrian, the boy. Photos actually showed injuries to Adrian and included terrifying images, including him strapped to an inversion table, and one of him standing outside in the winter, wearing only shorts and a t-shirt, holding his arms in the air. Other pictures include massive swelling to his arms and legs, and one with him in the shower, naked with a contusion on his mouth. Heather later tried to claim that the injury actually came from when Adrian tried taking the shower door off its track. Still, it was really another pummeling from when he tried to escape his makeshift cell, which was the bathroom shower. What makes matters so much worse in this case is that DCF had notes on almost all of the reports of abuse and investigated several of the claims. But when it gets right down to it, they indeed did nothing. A child lost his life, brutally and senselessly, and it could have, should have been prevented. Adrian's grandmother Judy called DCF and tried to report Mike and Heather, but because she didn't have direct proof of abuse, they wouldn't investigate or do anything. However, Heather and Mike wouldn't let Judy see any of the grandkids leading up to Adrian's death, so getting actual, quote, proof would have been impossible. Listeners, please brace yourselves. There are literally years of documented abuse. Because it is the very purpose of this podcast, we would be remiss if we didn't point out the serious flaws and failures in protecting this little boy. However, these details are extraordinarily graphic and quite perplexing. Despite our prior warning, listener discretion is strongly advised going forward. We will not be naming Adrian's siblings by name, or even by sex, as we feel their privacy and safety is of the utmost importance and concern. In December of 2011, the second known call was made to report child abuse and neglect. One of Adrian's siblings was said to have lost almost 23 pounds, which, no matter the age of the child, is too much weight loss. The caller further alleged that Mike had firearms in the home, but what was alarming was that he left them lying carelessly around the house, where any one of the kids could easily pick it up and have the worst kind of accident. Finally, it was reported that the caller witnessed Heather under the influence on unidentified drugs. The third call came in December of 2011 too. This time, the caller claimed that one of Adrian's siblings fell down the stairs. The fall caused severe bruising and internal bleeding. DCF responded by opening a file. The agent spoke with the doctor who stated the child's injuries were not consistent with a fall down the stairs. It also came out in the course of the investigation that Adrian cracked his head open around a month before. This was reported by none other than Mike himself. Each of the kids had a forensic interview conducted, and they each produced volumes of information, such as Mike hit the children in their stomachs, hands, and legs and forced them to stand in the corner. They reported that Adrian was kicked by Heather, who was wearing a boot at the time, and one of the children claimed that they heard Heather and Adrian in the bathroom once. The child was scared because they heard what sounded like gagging noises coming from Adrian, and it was feared Adrian was dead. DCF officially deemed Heather as a child abuser, and she was made to leave the home. In fact, Mike had to sign a document that enforced this. However, Mike allowed her to move back in January of 2012. Despite the signed document, nothing was done, and Adrian stayed in his father and Heather's care. The following month, in February, the children had separate interviews conducted. And this time they were done at school, away from Mike and Heather. Feeling a little more emboldened this time, one child reported that Heather choked Adrian because he didn't flush the toilet. Whether more investigation was being done, or whether the couple was simply moving back and forth between Kansas and Missouri, nothing actionable appears to have been done. On September 5, 2012, a court ordered that Adrian be formally placed in his father's custody. Despite already overwhelming evidence that all was not well, Adrian was sent back to the very place that caused him so much anguish. This poor little boy must have been petrified. The feelings this young child must have been trying to process are more than what even an adult could handle. No one was protecting him, and by sending him back to the same hell he probably thought he was being rescued from, the message was loud and clear to those children that no one believed them. Two different incidents happened in December 2012. The first was another call to the anonymous tip line saying that Mike was spanking the children so hard and frequently that their little behinds bled. The second incident was December 13, 2012, when the Family Service and Guidance Center in Topeka, Kansas, checked Adrian into their facility, citing that he presented a danger to himself, and further, they diagnosed him with a parent-child relational problem and disruptive behavior disorder. It's no wonder Adrian had these issues. He was desperately calling out for someone to save him from his living nightmare. Mike reported that Adrian was stealing, hoarding food, wetting the bed, lighting fires, and picking at sores all over his body. These are all very classic signs of child abuse in very young children. Furthermore, it doesn't take a psych degree to see that he acted out of fear and self-preservation. He was just a child. He didn't know how to take care of himself, much less how to protect himself. Adrian was not kept at the center